Hi everyone, and welcome to the first instalment of the series called Lewis Meet. Today I'm here with Mr. Mullock, Assistant Head of Sixth Form and Head of Business. So sir, I experience every day Ellesmere's approach to academia, but what would you say is the college's main approach to academic success?
I think preparation for success starts at the beginning of any cycle. Most students are starting a 2-year provision, possibly from year 10 to year 11, or indeed in sixth form. We take a very clear and focused approach on the learning cycle. We focus on work expectations, time management, and also study skills. The teaching staff will look to set aspirational targets for all pupils based on ability, so we promote the individual, and that is done very much with a tailored approach to learning.
Yeah, well that's, I suppose, the reason I chose to come to Ellesmere for sixth form, because that's, what's said is that Ellesmere College value the individual, and I don't want to be recognised as, what I can put on paper, but rather what I can offer as a person.
Sure. I mean, ultimately everybody's different, everybody learns differently, and it's our responsibility, and emphasise the word responsibility, to ensure that we can harness your potential.
Yeah.
Within the school, to do that, we use various assessment tools. In the lower school, we use CATS, in the middle school, we use YELIS, and in the sixth form, primarily for myself, I use ALICE, which is through Durham University. These tools allow the teaching body, more importantly the student, to identify their skill set and also to help make informed decisions based on each student throughout their schooling. Ultimately, the ability to be reflective and to look at your own performance is a key attribute to engagement and achievement.
And what would you say are the college's provisions for achieving this academic success?
The key part, as I said, is probably aspirational targets. Okay, we don't just want to settle for normal levels of performance, we also want to look to get the best out of our students. My main focus is very much in the sixth form is on pupil tracking, performance, and primarily support, and the key word is intervention, supported intervention. The review operates in tandem with our regular cycles or period grades, whereby every 6 weeks we have a review of current performance based on various blocks of work, and that is very much operated through all departments, and that is led prior to that very much by an assessment week, where all students have some formative assessment leading into the publish of the period grades. Once the grades come out, that is when I then start to look at all performances of every student. And obviously my colleagues in middle school and lower school will do the same. And this is where I'm looking at current performance to our own levels of expectation. I use a very simple colour-coded approach, and I therefore go through everybody's grades comparing actual performance to current attainment. Once that's been carried out, I'm then able to identify who I believe students would benefit from a level of intervention. It may be one subject where they're slightly underperforming, and that would then involve perhaps a fairly informed discussion, what reasons are there be, and see how that goes. I mean, the approach is very much a reflective one, and it's driven by the student, and it's important to emphasise that. And certainly I find that when I do the interviews, the key driver is the student and not me. They are coming through.
So again, valuing that individual stance on things and reflecting on the individual rather than a group based.
That's right. Often the students have their period grades already, and they've had a chance to digest them, look at them and understand what they've been given. And often when we come into that discussion then, they are the ones who know what they need to do to move forward. I very much just facilitate that by understanding and just asking certain questions, looking at, again, the things I mentioned, their time management skills, how they're dealing with various subjects, their approach to individual learning. And often through that discussion we come up with a series of short-term targets, things to do over the next 4 to 6 weeks before the next block of assessment. The benefits of that are, once I've done that discussion, I feed that information into a number of different people. So the heads of department are involved in it, and the classroom teacher, the tutor is also involved. And so what we're building is a network of support. So everybody who has a responsibility for you as a student, Lewis, has that care. And is looking to be involved in that support.
Well, I've always found that, here for a year and a couple of weeks now, I found that period grade system so beneficial, especially with the new linear A levels in college. You're not doing your exams until the end of the second year, and for the sciences especially, you're having to retain so much knowledge, but having each period grade and having each formal test every 6-week block, you're constantly having to revise and constantly having to make sure your knowledge and ability of the subject is up to scratch.
Yeah, I mean, one of my colleagues often uses the phrase continuous revision. And I think the difference when we step up to certainly in the sixth form and that approach for university is very much now it's one chance only. With all the resits moving away, you've got that one chance 2 years down the line. And very much every subject you work in, you're building foundations each block, and the importance of a stable foundation on a week-to-week basis is essential to success long term.
So sir, if you then could wrap up and summarise the academic success at Ellesmere, how would you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to summarise what we do in a few words, but I suppose from my my area, we have to have the responsibility that often many students don't know their own potential, and we as staff have a responsibility to get the best out of our students and to encourage them in the areas of expertise they have. The way I would probably describe it is comparing our students possibly to top athletes, whereby over the 2-year cycle, which is what most of our students are on in terms of learning, they're working towards small incremental improvements each time. You mentioned yourself the value of the period grades in blocks, and each time that block gives you a chance to make a slight improvement to your work process, aspects to your learning, different ways of doing things, and each time you become better and a more able student in terms of ability. You know, I kind of use the idea that we want to make our students faster, and what that means is we start off in the beginning with focused attainment. That is the driver. If you don't know where you're going, you're just going to drift. And so we have focused attainment from day one. We also then have structured and supported teaching. You mentioned yourself about the individual, and therefore lessons are geared for everybody's abilities and everybody can make progress in the same time. We also have high levels of expectation. You know, if we expect the most from you, you will also do the same, and I won't settle for just turning up and delivering. We want to see you push and maximise your ability, and that comes down to endeavour. We like to make our students academically ambitious, and I think that's evident by the results we achieve year on year.
Absolutely.
And finally, all those things come into results and rewards. And from our point of view as a staff, there is no greater enjoyment than seeing the students over a 2-year course flourish and move on to the next platform in their lives. And it's that approach which is also great, but from our point of view, that is our learning curve. We use that as a benchmark for the next 2-year cycle and what improvements we can make.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very pleased to be part of the cycle, of course, and thank you very much for joining us today on the first of the series. So next week we'll be interviewing more teachers backstage, and thank you very much for watching.